without you. Okay, there we go. I don't know why I can't hear you. You're not muted. Alrighty, so now we're not muted. How about a little theme song? I've been to Romamu. I've been to BJ. I searched all over for a place to pray. Ooh, praying, good theme. I found the mosh pit and knew that this was it. I am a moshnik and I'm here to stay. And I'm turning gray. I see you nodding your head, Alana. I found community that is in tune with me, singing and dancing in our Zoom agog. That should be a capital Z. Some contemplation mixed with elation. I am a moshnik and I'm here to stay. And I'm turning gray. Well, actually turning white. A chance to meet you. A chance to greet you. A time to deepen what it means to belong. Let's have some fun tonight and spread some joy and light. I am a moshnik and I'm here to stay. And I'm turning gray. Let's hear the Hoff Memorial Harmonica Solo. Hoff, we love you and we miss you.
We can't hear your music.
But your spirit is here with us all the time, leaving us with health and happiness for all. So welcome, everybody. Judy, Scott, and especially Rabbi Nadya Gross, all the way from Colorado. Rabbi Nadya, welcome for part 2. You are muted. You're going to need to unmute yourself.
Yes, sir.
There you go. And so part 2 of what? Part 2 of Patach Libi, Open My Lips. I was having a nice conversation with Devorah today for the coming attraction, who's going to be leading breakthrough rooms this week. And you know, Parshat Naso, we have the priest channeling the divine spirit. And so we were having a conversation of what it means to be a Klei Kodesh. What does it mean to have something flow through you from a source towards or into another human being? And so that's a little coming attraction for this Shabbos morning, and something that actually might come up tonight. Reb Nadya, welcome again to the Mosh Pit.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
Well, I'm more than delighted to welcome you. Just to let you all know again. Oh, Gail, welcome. If you didn't catch me saying it last time, Reb Nadya was and still remains a very important person in my life, and that she was one of the people who rescued me from that sea I was drowning in the middle of my rabbinical studies, where she invited me to. Have you ever thought about the Hashpa'ah program? You know, being a spiritual director, and truthfully, the answer was no. But I did know it existed. And without going into the depths of what happened there was that my ecstatic side found a worthy partner in the contemplative side of me that never had been properly nurtured. And so I will always thank you for that, for Reb Nadya. And so tonight you're going to be teaching again, inviting us into a prayerful state. But I did want to spend a few minutes on just asking you, like, where do you come from? Like, I know you have smicha from the Jewish Theological Seminary as a chazan. No, it wasn't JTS. Where was that from?
I had private smicha as a chazan from a conservative cantor in Southern California who was actually the president of the Cantors Assembly.
Who was that?
Cantor Philip Modell.
Wow. So in other words, you drank from the same well that he did, and so your background, your smicha comes from more traditional source than Jewish renewal. So would you
Yeah.
just share a little bit about that journey and how you found Jewish renewal and your intersection with Reb Zalman? I would love, and I'm sure everybody else would love to hear a little bit about that.
Oh, gosh. How can I do this in a nutshell, Mark? You didn't give me enough advance warning. Um, well, I can say that most people here know that I'm married to a rabbi who was a student at the Jewish Theological Seminary, came out as a conservative rabbi. We were a rabbi cantor team on the pulpit for quite a number of years. And the well was running dry in the denominational world for us for different reasons. But I'll speak from my perspective because I grew up in a mystical home. My grandmother was a mystic, and I was trained in a particular worldview, and the God that I was introduced to as a toddler and with whom I had relationship all my life just didn't make it into the denominational world that I was a part of. And so we left it. We started our own thing. We had an independent congregation in Los Angeles for over 12 years. And about 10 years into that period, we were feeling isolated and alone, and we were reading all these amazing books that were coming out in English now on Jewish spirituality, mysticism, etc., etc. And one day we looked at the flyleaves of all of these books, and the common denominator was Rabbi Zalman Schachter Shalomi. They were all being written by students of his or people who'd been inspired by him. And so we reached out to him. Actually, I made Victor reach out to him, and Victor has his own story about that. But that started a relationship. He was very intrigued by who we were and our backgrounds, and as he always was with any new person who reached out to him. And we had a weekly phone call with him. This was before Zoom and all those other options. We had a weekly phone call with him. This was the mid-90s, and he was guiding us in a way in the work that we were doing where we didn't have chevra. And at a certain moment, he said to us, you know, you've been doing Jewish renewal all these years. You need to come out of the closet and meet your chevra. And he really encouraged us to go to the Aleph Kala and to come to Eilat Chaim. Meanwhile, we met him one time in person in Los Angeles when he came to do high holidays there. And we drove Erev Rosh Hashanah, right, all the way from where we lived way out in the valley into Los Angeles proper. If you've been in LA, you know what a sacrifice that was on a day that I had to feed a bunch of people dinner and then go lead services for the high holidays. And that was an amazing encounter with him where my first sense when I stepped into the room and he put his hands on my shoulders and looked in my eyes. Now, I had known him for almost 2 years on the phone. And at that point, I just knew that he could see into my soul, like that he just, I couldn't hide anything from him. Let's put it that way. And so then that following summer, we went to the Aleph Kala and we went to Eilat Chaim and we met our chevra. And we met, other rabbis and students who were guided by the same things we were guided by and wanted to change the world, change the Jewish world, and through that change the world itself. I can say that Victor's first attraction to Reb Zalman was through paradigm shift. And I just found him to be a deep spiritual being and talked a language akin to what I'd grown up with. I became a real chasida, I took him into my heart as my Rebbe years later in 1998 when he taught a workshop at Eilat Chaim on deep ecumenism. And when that was the week where I said, this person could be my Rebbe, because I had had so much life experience in different religious traditions, always seeking that mystical spark that was missing for me in the conservative synagogue I was first, growing up in and then leading. And I could never tell people that I did those things, as a chazan, it certainly couldn't tell my rabbi when I was a high school kid that I was doing these things. It never shook my foundation as a Jew, but I was looking for that mystical God. I found it in charismatic Christian churches, where they danced with God the way I danced with God as a child. So, so that was when he really became my Rebbe. But we'd known him for years before that.
Thank you.
How's that?
Yeah, that's perfect. I really appreciate you sharing that, not just with everybody else, but with me too, because there's parts of your story that I don't know. Scott, a question, comment?
Yeah, if I could ask Reb Nadya a question, I'm just fascinated by the idea of having a grandmother who was a mystic because it's so far from my experience. Would you mind talking a minute about that?
My Savta, my grandmother, who was born in Palestine, was part of the movement that founded a state together with my grandfather. Her maternal line passed down a tradition, an oral tradition that was passed from mother to daughter, in my case, from grandmother to granddaughter, that was ancient and always evolving. So the women formed circles where they guided one another, where they opened their channels to receive guidance and to experience the divine and to know how to live their lives in the world. It's the mysticism is actually founded in pre-patriarchal Canaanite religion. There's a lot of indigenous earth goddess remnants in it, but then that line moved through Tzfat in the time of the flourishing of Kabbalah in Tzfat, and so there's Lurianic Kabbalah mixed into it, and then that my lineage moved into Jerusalem and intermarried with Hasidim, and there's Hasidic Kabbalah interspersed in it, and all of that was used as a way of understanding God and how we are, what we are here for, and how we are meant to be in relationship with that divine. And I teach my grandmother's wisdom in a 2-year wisdom school through my organization Yerusha, which is open to everyone. And there are a number of people on this call tonight who have either completed the wisdom school or are presently in the wisdom school. You can talk to them.
Thank you.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Reb Nadya, for that as well. So I do want to note something before you move into what you prepared to share with us this evening, which is to dedicate, I'd like to dedicate the evening. And who I would like to dedicate this evening to is our good friend celebrating a birthday today, Peter Buck.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bina,
I'm
you look
so blessed by.
you look amazing for 39.
Oh, yeah, I wish. Double that and go back a little bit, and that's where we are.
Happy birthday, Bina. We're going to dedicate this to you, tonight's
Thank you.
teaching.
Thank you.
Reb Nadya, all yours.
Thanks, Mark. And happy birthday, Bina. Wow, how wonderful to offer this on your birthday. Well, I'm curious, who was at the first workshop that I did with Moshe a few weeks back? Okay, wow, great. Well, thank you for coming back. I guess it wasn't a complete dud. So, in that workshop where I was asked specifically to talk to you about prayer, I introduced, I asked the question, is prayer the vehicle to the heart? Does it open the heart? Or is an open heart necessary for prayer to arise. So I'm wondering if any of you who were with me last time had any thoughts about that in the interim, or experience of it in your own engagement with or experience of prayer.
Would you ask the question again, Reb Nadya?
The question is prayer the vehicle to the heart, that which opens the heart, or is an open heart necessary for prayer to arise? In other words, it's a chicken or eggs question.
Go ahead, Dan, and then
Yes,
Devorah.
Dan.
So I'm thinking that the prayer starts first. I mean, doing the action would help me open up. I could see that if I was in a situation of being very open and connected and all this, that I would pray, but maybe not. It seems much more likely that if I do the action, that it might open my heart. So I would go that way.
Okay. Thank you. Devorah, and then Miriam Root, and then Ilana and Meira. That's what I'm going to take because I want to move on. Go ahead, Devorah.
I think it's always a chicken and egg thing, Nadia. I think that sometimes, for me anyway, sometimes I'm spontaneously open and prayerful, and other times I'm not into it, but the prayer will take me to it. So I think it depends on the minute or the day.
That's great. Thank you. That's lovely. Miriam Root.
I think it's both. And I had this picture of me when I was a little girl and, learning the prayers that I learned, as a good little Catholic little girl. And I really think that it softened that those prayers softened my heart. And I think the softened heart is what opens up for a deeper connection and connection with Shahina, with God. So for me, it's both. And prayer can be just the way I was looking for magnolia blooms when I was driving home today from an appointment. And it just opened my heart the way the magnolia blooms were open. So I think it's both. It's both for me.
Thank you. And Ilana?
My original thought was working on myself to open my heart to receive the prayer that is waiting for me to come to it. And then listening to everybody else, I'd have to agree. It depends on the situation in the day. If I'm not able to open my heart, the prayer will come to me and open it for me. And if I am ready, it is equally a significant experience. It's just coming from another source, which is my heart is open and the prayer comes to me. So I guess I'd have to join the group, even though it's 4 Jews and 5 opinions. I'm going to go with both.
Thank you.
It's fluid.
Thank you. And Meira Appel, did you want to say something?
Well, I felt I took my hand down because I thought many of the people expressed what I was going to say, but basically I feel like it's a flow state, and that how to get the flow state, how to get into a flow state is different in different circumstances, but once you're there, they feed each other. It's a flow. It's a back and forth. That's the way that I feel.
Perfect. Thank you. I love that because you're leading right into where I want to take you all today. But I'm just going to remind you also that, in Hebrew, lehitpalel, to pray, the verb is a reflexive verb, right? Which means to examine oneself, to judge oneself. So prayer in that sort of traditional form was a way of coming to see who we are, coming to know ourselves, right? We also talked about the fact that prayer does not change the world out there. It changes the one who prays. We don't pray to change God's mind, you know, or whatever it is we think we're praying to. We're praying with. So I love that flow state, Meira. Thank you so much for that. And so it's like, for me, even in hearing all of your answers, you know, I want to wonder, what is prayer to you, right? So Miriam Root, when you said, you know, looking at the magnolias, sort of experiencing the magnolias, you were in a prayer state. And my savta, my grandmother, would say that our goal in life is to make our whole life a prayer, is to so that everything that we do, everything we think, everything we engage with is in that flow state that Meira referred to. I think I might have told you right at the end last time, I can't remember, that my grandmother's favorite line, which she used all the time, and of course it was years before I actually studied the Book of Psalms and realized that her line came from a psalm, was Ahalela ya bechayai azamra lelohai be'odi, which means, and don't ask me which psalm it's from because I have not memorized the numbers, but it means I will praise God with my life, and I sing to God with all that I have, with everything in me. So she went about her day singing everything. She was singing all the time, and she was often singing made up stuff that was the way she was talking to the universe, talking to the divine, talking to what I call God, which is probably not what it means when you hear the word, right? She was and everything she did was a way of engaging with the divine. And for her, prayer was that engagement, was the way that we get close with, the way that we engage with, the way that we experience a meeting with the divine, with God, with whatever, right? Whatever we want to call it. So how do we get there? How do we get to the place where our whole life is a prayer, where everything that we do, we're doing in conscious engagement with that divine presence, with that divine energy, or whatever it is that you understand God to be? So I have to go back, I have to dial back to begin to answer that question to one of the very first stories that I learned from my savta, from my grandmother, was the story of creation. It was really in answer to what am I supposed to be? Why am I here? What is my responsibility as a human being in this realm? And she said that our responsibility was to respond to God's longing, to the longing of the Creator, the longing to be in relationship, which is what brought creation about. So many of you have studied that Kabbalistic tree of life and understand the process of creation that is described in Lurianic Kabbalah, that says that everything begins with the will of God and in God's mind, right? Everything begins as an idea. It starts with this desire, this will, this ratzon, that wants to be in relationship with something other than the no thingness that was all that existed before creation began. And in that moment that will arises, that it lights up the knowing and the understanding. It lights up that upper triangle of the tree of life for those who know it, that says that suddenly knows what that relationship can be, what God wants it to be. You know, in the Lecha Dodi on Friday nights, we sing a line that says, Sof ma'aseh b'machshavat chila, right? The final act of creation, that final doing, originated in the first thought, right? The very first thought. So it's the thought that starts the process of creation, and then it begins to flow through all the attributes of loving kindness and boundaries and discernment and harmony and all those other things. That's the way we're generally taught about creation in the Kabbalistic sense, the traditional Kabbalistic sense, the one that was written down by men. What the women understood was that before creation began, there was all that existed was this no thingness, which was all things and everything, undifferentiated. And the first thing that differentiated out of that no thingness was a longing. And that longing then gave rise to the will to create. So when we think of longing, we always think of what we're longing for, right? I long for this. I long for that because it's something that's missing or something that I want, more of or whatever. But actually, in this story, the longing exists before the will to create, before it attaches to an outcome. The longing gives rise to will. So when we say, I'm longing for, we're really saying, I really want that. The longing itself, according to Savta, is pre-conscious. It's inchoate. It is a motivating, an arising, an arousal, if you will. And because that's the first thing that differentiates out of the no thingness and starts the whole process of creation, that longing is hardwired into all of creation and therefore into all of us. And so the way that we engage with, the way that we access that divinity, the Ein Sof, the no thingness, not the God of attributes and not the Shekhinah, the present, but the way that we get in touch with that pre-conscious, pre-created energy is by cultivating our own longing. And when we're cultivating our longing, we are praying, not with words, not with rules, not with, time of the day, what we need to do at particular times of the day. It's actually accessing that place inside of us, that moment, that place. I have to use all different kinds of words because it's not a time and it's not a place and it's pre all of that, but accessing that felt sense that isn't attached to thought, that isn't attached to an outcome, that doesn't say this is what it needs to be. And when we can access that, then we meet the divine face to face, right? In Hebrew, face to face is panim el panim, right? We use that term a lot. But panim is also, if you just change the vowels, it's the same word as pnim, which means interiority, right? And we understand the Hebrew language is telling us that our face is actually the mirror of our interior, right? That's why the words are the same word. But we can meet the divine, the creator, that creative energy in the interiority of our experience. We enter into the interiority of God's, if you will, experience. And that's been like a koan for me all of my life. How to actually arrive at that moment and place that is pre-thought, pre-attachment. Right? Now, I heard years ago Reb Zalman, speaking of Reb Zalman, on a recording that some friends of mine made, up to they created a chant. This is Danya Uriel and Eyal Rivlin, for those who know them, who are a married couple who do beautiful music. They created a chant to another psalm that says, like a deer thirsts for the waters, the flowing waters, so my soul longs for you. And Reb Zalman, in an introduction to this chant on their recording, said, people think when they're longing for God, that they're longing because God is missing for them. And they fail to recognize that God is present in the longing itself. That was the closest Reb Zalman ever came to saying something very much like my Savta, right? That in that longing, because the longing is the whole impulse, the pulse that starts the whole process that ends with us being here in this, together with this whole beautiful created world. So I wonder if there are any immediate thoughts or questions about that, because I'm going to offer you a practice and see what we can experience here about longing. Dan, go ahead.
So, as some of you know, I've struggled with the whole concept of God and prayer and all of that. I'm not inherently and wasn't born a person of faith and all this, but what you're describing to me sounds like, with the longing and the yearning, it just sounds like, like you said, a pre-verbal, pre-thought, pre-ego type of need for relationship, a need for connection. And we may not know what we need to be connected to, but that's the nature of the universe, is relationship, connection, whether it's a pulsing or acting on each other, whatever it is. And we all need that. And if I understand what you're saying, in a sense, God needed that or wanted that, and so had to create an other to have a relationship with. It's hard to have a relationship if you are everything. So you create the other, and then you can have that relationship and then co-create the rest of the world, and everything else follows from there. So I'm getting a hint, I think, of what you're talking about and what the idea is about prayer and life force. Even just looking through the eyes of a baby who doesn't have the words, but just the need to connect, the need to relate.
And we can see that longing. When I said it's hardwired into all of creation, we can see that longing. So you just described, a baby that is needing to connect. That's the longing being expressed. We can see the longing in our gardens when the plants turn toward the light, or others that that bloom in the dark, but that we can experience the longing in our pets when they whine for attention, when they whine for just for love, not when they're hungry or need a snack, right? We can. I take walks early in the morning now, and I'm engaging with the longing of the day that is arising as the light is just coming up, and I'm noticing where longing is showing up. As I said, this is my koan, so I'm looking all the time to get closer to that experience and to see it in the created world. Because that's how we connect. That's how we engage. When I see it in my rose bush, it makes me want to have a conversation with the rose bush, which I do, right? Or whatever it is in nature that I encounter. And that is the common language that we all share. So early on, I understood longing as a language. It's the language of connection. It's the thing that we all share. And when we can get into that flow, thank you, Maira, for that word tonight. When we can get into that flow, then everything is a prayer. Then we are the prayer. It's not that we are praying. We are the prayer. We are the encounter. We are the engagement. We are the response and the call, right? We're in that flow, the back and forth, the ratzova shov, right? That so many of our teachers speak of. Meira, I saw you raise your hand.
My personal experience of it is by being as present to the moment as I can. That each moment has its own unfolding. And I guess that flow state to me is by being present, not with my mind, but with my whole being in the moment, and allowing, I guess, the longing to be expressed in whatever way it comes through me. Sometimes it's a poem, sometimes it's a piece of art, sometimes it's just quiet. And that there's such a poignancy in the silence that a lot of wisdom traditions express, that you can find that longing, or whatever that intangible sense is, that presence in the silence. But I find it in the now, in being very, very present. That's my experience.
Thank you. Thank you. Mark?
Yeah, something arose for me as a result of a number of the sharings, which is this line from Pesachim, and I had to look it up. I didn't know it offhand. That I'm going to put into the chat. Yoter mimasha egel rotzel linak, para rotzel hanik. So this reciprocal sense that we're part of a yearning back, Ratzvashov, that goes, I hate to use the words both ways, but it's all we have is language to use, right? So more than the calf wishes to suckle, the cow, to suck, the cow wants to let down, the cow wants to suckle. this idea has always just resonated a lot for me when I really feel like I'm in the rhythm, the flow, to use that word again tonight, of like of prayer. If I'm in a shtibel setting, or for sure if I'm with my renewal chevra, where you just get going and you lose yourself and you find yourself simultaneously. All of these are just metaphors searching for something that can't be named.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of this wisdom, right? Is that it's giving us sort of a way to understand all of these experiences and things that we witness and see, to recognize that this is sort of the primary, right, the fundamental experience, expression, way of being for all created, all of the created world. And that's that first little thing that differentiates out of the no thingness, the Ein Sof, and becomes the the connector, the identifier, the everything that we are. So I want to share this chant with you all, with gratitude to my friend and colleague, Rabbi David Curiel, who has composed this beautiful chant to these words that are from, on Shabbos, the Zmirot that we sing. These words say in Hebrew, Sama nafshi leElohim leEl Chai, means my soul thirsts. It's just like that other psalm that I mentioned, like the deer thirsts for the divine flow of life, for leElohim, for the God of multiplicity, for the all, for the everything. I see that. And El Chai is the living God, or so libi uvesari yerannenu el Chai, my heart and my flesh sing out to the living flow, the living God, the flow of life. To me, this is a song of longing. These are words of longing. And so I'd like to have us chant these words together and then see where it takes us. Okay. So it sounds like this. Sama nafshi leElohim leElcha. Sama nafshi leElohim leElcha. Sing it with me. Sama nafshi leElohim leElcha. Sama nafshi leElohim leElcha. And the next part. Libi uvesari yerannenu leElcha. Libi uvesari yerannenu leElcha. Sama Sama nafshi Lelohi Sama Sama nafshi Lelohi Lecha Libi ובשרי ירא אליך ליבי ובשרי ירא אליך שמה שמה נפשי אלוהים שמה שמה נפשי אלוהים לך ליבי ובשרי ירדנו אליך ליבי ובשרי ירדנו אליך ליבי ובשרי ירדנו אליך ליבי ובשרי ירדנו אליך שמה שמה נפשי לך I want to invite you to close your eyes or lower your gaze so that your focus is entirely on the innerness, the interiority of your being. And breathing in the resonance of that chant, those words. Where do they come to rest? Where do you sense, experience in your body, in your being, that thirst, that longing. You might put your hand on the place where you sense that most acutely. And in the next minute or two in silence, notice what arises in that place where your hand is resting. And in a moment, as you allow your eyes to open, notice if there are words to the song that your heart and your flesh want to sing out, or what else arises. Rip Mark, can we send our friends off into about a 6-minute encounter in breakthrough rooms in dyads, noting that Rick and Elizabeth are already a dyad. And what I would love for you to do is just take 2 or 3 minutes each to share that song, that place, that conversation that you may have had in the place where your hand came to rest, or anything of this experience that wants to be witnessed. Just 2 or 3 minutes each, and then we'll come back and hear from some of you who want to share with the whole group. Okay, well, hopefully they got it anyway.
Welcome back, everyone.
Well, welcome. So I'd love to hear from a few of you, but before we do that, I want to thank you, Bruce, for that beautiful quote. And it so resonates. And I think, as I said to you before, when I was answering the question about my grandmother's wisdom, there's a lot of ancient indigenous wisdom in the work that I received from her. For her, and it's become for me as well, that when we are the prayer, right, when we are living the longing, we are living in the interiority of the divine, the creator, divinity. And so we are co-creating. We are in this co-creative relationship. And I often say to people that when I go into my kitchen to begin to prepare a meal, particularly when I'm feeding others, right, and I want it to be really special, I invite God in as my sous chef. So, because I learned from my savta that what happens in the kitchen, that's alchemy. When we take a bunch of different disparate ingredients and we create something nourishing, nurturing, delicious, and flowing with love, the expression of love, of course, from a Jewish grandmother, is always the food that we eat, that we are fed, then that's what alchemy is. That's how we come to experience alchemy. The alchemy in the kitchen for me is it's something that I live with every day. I love to cook. I love to feed people. I inherited this from my savta, from my grandmother. And I always feel God or that creator energy. Whatever, I use the G word because it's a catch-all term, but I'm really talking about that creator energy, that transformative energy, that which I am a part of and which enlivens me and flows through me. So I'm always co-creating, and I'm especially conscious of it in the kitchen. But I'd love to hear a little bit from anyone who'd like to share what arose for you in your conversation, in your interiority, and in your witnessing with another. And how does this inform your sense of prayer?
Bruce?
I'm full of words, and words like longing and yearning and no thingness and God and connectional and relational and prayer, singing, expression and reflexive and rhythm, and how words, because as some of you were saying, it's all we really have in some ways, and just putting them all together and kind of stirring them up because they all go back to the source anyway. Yeah, I'm other than that, I'm kind of tongue-tied at the moment.
Well, thank you. Because what was arising for me as I was listening to you, and then we've got Miriam, Ruth, and Abigail in line here, is, you know, the Baal Shem Tov, who's also part of my lineage, my Safta's work, teaches that the letters are the building blocks of creation, right? So the words that we have, that's how we access the creative force and the creator. And it starts with the letters that then are formed into words, and then those words form sentences. But when we are just filled with word, I think it's more, we get closer to that undifferentiated experience, perhaps. So thank you for that. Miriam, Ruth Hazoheret.
For me, there weren't a lot of words, at least depends on what time of the day sometimes, but it was a flow. There was a pulse of the longing. And when I was in the breakthrough room, we talked about kind of riding the waves of the flow. And it was a slowing. And Bruce, thank you for the quote from Sister Jose Habde. I've been in her presence. I way back. I heard her several times, and I was really touched by the call to just being present in the moment and slowing down. And that's what it felt like for me when I went inside. And the longing was peaceful tonight. Sabarti.
Shamati. Thank you. That's beautiful. Abigail?
Yes, so for me, I come from an interfaith ministry perspective and just so immersed in this community and so grateful. One of the prayer practices I've had that this reminded me of is where we really honor the one first and then proceed into unification, that I am one with the one. So that's the full connection. And then affirmation and thanksgiving and then releasing. And so it's this very big flow of prayer. And I vary from that too, but it's a style of prayer, affirmative prayer, that I've really lived. And tonight, putting my hand on my heart and then also kind of on the belly, it's that flow within. And my partner in the breakthrough room was talking about really focusing on the breath. So it really is about flow and connection, being so intertwined. Barty.
Shamati, thank you. Yeah, for me, my hand went to my throat because I felt this well of tears as I was chanting. So, and that's not always where I feel it, but today. So you went to the heart and belly. I like that. Devorah?
I actually had a lot of technical difficulties as you were leading up to the exercise, so I left and came back and missed the chant. So when I got to the breakthrough room, I confessed that to my partner, and she expressed her experience, and I could still hear some of the chanting, and I took it in with what she was saying. And when I came back to this room, I felt this very wonderful calm. And so even though I thought I wasn't getting very much from it, I still have this inner peace right now. So thank you.
Thank you. And Bina, the birthday girl.
Well, I think what I've realized tonight, and it was wonderful to hear you teach this again because I've heard this teaching before, but every time I hear it, I get it in a completely new way. And I think what I've realized is for me, there are no words that work for me in the beginning, that the only thing that really moves me there is movement and melody. And I can get there so fast with those things, but it takes me a long time when it's about vocabulary. I just don't do that well. I never know how to talk about this work that you do. I have always struggled with that. My descriptive words about it are like, but the very melody of that chant, we couldn't hear a lot of your words because a lot of you were not coming through. And that's okay because the melody itself is so longing. La da ba da da ba. I mean, it's like, it's, I feel my body reaching up right there. So I guess for me, it's a very physical event, prayer. So I really appreciate what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So, when we make our life a prayer, when we recognize that everything we do, everything we are, everyone we engage with is in that experience and expression of the divine flow. There's something transformative in that experience. And then we don't need the rules about when we pray, how we pray, what we don't need the words either. And I'm with you in the music, Bina, you know that. It's like that's what opens the channels for me. And as a very young child, my Saba, my grandmother's partner, my grandfather, would sing Hasidic nigunim on Shabbat afternoon after our main meal. He'd push his chair back from the table and he'd open his chest and he would start to sing a nigun. And as a very young child, my experience was that when he started to sing, it was like these steps. He would build these steps, right, from his heart, where his voice was emanating, all the way into the heavens. And I had this idea that if I could just climb those steps, I would reach God. This, as a very young child, that was my experience. So music is always what it's about for me. And ultimately, it's about being, and being in the moment, and being present to what is, and always recognizing, no matter where we are, who we're with, what we're doing, that we are not, it's not from us, it's through us, everything that is happening. It's through us. And we're in this incredible divine soup. And to me, that's ultimately the answer to prayer and what prayer is. So thank you, Rabbi Mark, for inviting me into this beautiful community.
Thank you for Nadya for helping us to open. So when the psalmist ran out of words, all that was left was breath. Kol ha-neshama te'halleluya, hallelujah. Kol ha-neshama te'halleluya, hallelujah. Hallelujah. One neshama hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Good night, everyone. God bless. Pleasant dreams. Laila Tov. Thank you, Reb Nadya.
Thank you. Laila Tov, everyone.
Thank you, Lila, too.
Thank you.